Mark Carney spends his birthday in the UK, while Polyev heads to the Lone Star State. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow. Today is Mark Carney's birthday, and the Prime Minister is celebrating, as most Canadians do, by meeting the King. Mr. Carney is spending the day in familiar surroundings. He's in London, in the UK. He spent part of today at Downing Street, the official residence of Britain's Prime Minister, where he was welcomed by its current occupant, Keir Starmer. During some brief remarks, Prime Minister Carney spoke of the two countries' ongoing support for Ukraine and the need to build coalitions.
I've just been sworn in as Prime Minister and came here, and we agreed to work closely on a number of international issues and also to tighten our bilateral ties in intelligence sharing, in trade across a whole host of areas, and that's exactly what's been happening, and it's a good thing that has happened because the world's become even more challenging. And I do want to pick up on this point on Ukraine and really commend you here for your leadership of the Coalition of the Willing. It would not have happened without you, and it's exactly that type of leadership that the world requires now, which is to put together these coalitions that help address real issues. Now, of course, the number of issues is multiplied, so we'll have some discussions on those, and I very much look forward to that.
At some point today, after his meeting with Prime Minister Starmer, Prime Minister Carney was expected to meet King Charles III. They are expected to talk about Arctic issues, climate change, and the King's recent meeting with Treaty 6 chiefs. Canada also has a new High Commissioner for the UK. He is former Liberal MP Bill Blair. He's a former Public Safety Minister, Minister of National Defence, and former Chief of the Toronto Police Service. High Commissioner Blair was asked about the Prime Minister's view on the war in the Middle East and what, if any, role Canada would be playing in that war.
To the best of my knowledge, Canada has not yet made any commitment to send any of our naval assets into the region. We're aware of what the United Kingdom does. I'm sure that will form part of the discussion that our Prime Ministers will have tomorrow. But right now, Canada has, and as the Prime Minister has been so clear, Canada has no intention that we were not part of the initial discussion, and we are not participating in that conflict.
Prior to his trip to the UK, Prime Minister Carney was in Norway for a meeting with Nordic leaders and to observe war exercises in the region. He was asked what came out of the meetings on joint security.
This is a very positive discussion. So it's how do we take more responsibility, even more responsibility for Arctic security? How do we work together in pooling our resources, resources that we're increasing as part of our NATO pledges? How do we pool those and be more effective? Operation Cold Response, all of us involved in that with a number of other nations, is an example of a practical example of that. There are many others.
When asked what the biggest security threat facing Canada's Arctic right now, Prime Minister Carney said it was Russia.
Look, the biggest security threat, physical security threat in the Arctic is Russia. And there are various aspects of that. There are other layered threats in there, but first and foremost, and consistent with many of the other aspects of NATO security development, is unfortunately it is a common threat, and that is the case in the Arctic. First point. Second, I just underscore that it is welcome, arguably overdue, but welcome, that now NATO is focusing increasingly on Arctic security, and Arctic Sentry obviously is a manifestation of that. It needs to be fully developed, and what you're hearing from all of us is the commitment in order to do that.
The Prime Minister was in Norway, and he was asked about disappointing economic news at home. Gas prices are way up, and there was a bad unemployment report released just on Friday. The Bank of Canada will make an interest rate announcement midweek. The inflation rate was released today. It came in at 1.8%, but that was the reading for February, before the recent spike in fuel costs. The Prime Minister said the employment situation in Canada is actually better than it is in the United States.
You look at the performance of the labor market over the course of the last 6 months. We've created over 80,000 jobs net over the last 6 months. The United States has created 6,000 jobs. Okay, the United States, 11 times the size of our economy. Wages are growing at 4.2%, fastest wage growth in years. Unemployment, 6.7%, is lower than the peak the level when I came into office a year ago.
While Prime Minister Carney spends his birthday in London, Pierre Poilievre is on a tour of various American destinations. He was in Windsor, Ontario over the weekend after stopping in Detroit, outlining how he thinks Canada could get tariff-free access to the U.S. market for the Canadian auto sector.
What we're going to do to get the tariffs removed is put forward this plan that I've laid out, a Canadian proposed auto pack for North America. And how will we get Trump to agree? Well, the plan that we're putting forward allows both the United States and Canada to massively increase their production by incentivizing automakers to match a car made with a car sold. So that is how we're going to get the United States to agree to removing tariffs. I just came back from Detroit, where I met with the Detroit automakers. They want to see the tariffs removed, and they believe that they could increase production on their side of the border if we put an end to these tariffs. At the same time, we want to incentivize people to buy Canadian. Removing the GST gives them a 5% advantage, and we will be encouraging premiers to do the same on their share of the sales tax. So we could end up with a very large financial advantage for Canadians who go into a dealership to buy Canadian and support our Canadian production.
Mr. Poilievre is in Houston today for meetings with executives in the U.S. energy industry. He's also scheduled to make a stop in Austin, Texas. And later this week on Thursday, he's expected to visit New York City, where he will make a speech to the Foreign Policy Association. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
He's usually here on Tuesdays, but he's not available tomorrow, so he's agreed to join us today and help us start the week. Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Good to hear from you.
My pleasure, Rob.
To read you a report in one of the papers today. Quote, homeowners with stronger credit scores are increasingly defaulting on their mortgage payments, an alarming trend that reveals the impact of higher mortgage rates on traditionally lower-risk borrowers. Across the country, their delinquency rate increased by 31%. From the fourth quarter of 2024 to the same period in 2025, Equifax said there is an alarming acceleration of financial stress that is rapidly expanding to more creditworthy borrowers. Professor Ian Lee, do you think there's a reason to be worried about Canadians being unable to pay their mortgages?
Zero. This is a good example of, let me explain why, that famous old saying, statistics don't lie, but liars, can play games with stats. And I'm not accusing them of liars. I'm saying that they have, they're playing games with the data. So that's a provocative statement, and they're the national experts at this. So how, Ian Lee, can you say that? Well, let's go to that trusty organization called Statistics Canada. Okay? And I don't think anybody's going to say that they're cooking the books. So there are 4,954,000 mortgages in Canada as of December 31, 2025, that were outstanding. These are not mortgages that have been paid off. These are outstanding mortgages across the whole country. How many are delinquent? Because they report this. Well, 12,900 people, homeowners, mortgages, out of 4,900,000 are delinquent, which is 0.26%. In other words, 0.2% of 1%. Not 1%, not 2%, not 30%, 0.2% of 1%. That's the national delinquency. What this agency is, Equifax, and I used to use it when I was in the bank. Its predecessor company, by the way. for credit ratings. And what they're doing is they're torquing the data. This is why I tell my students over and over, and I know people get angry at this. I say, you will not use statistics from unions or from companies or from nonprofits. But why? Because I hate them? Of course not. They're not professional statisticians, mathematicians, and econometricians. And so they take the data and they play games with it and they torque it with the best of interest. I'm not accusing them of malfeasance or doing anything nefarious out of self-interest or corruption. I'm just simply saying that they're in the business of saying, oh, we got to worry about credit delinquency because we're a credit rating company. We want to show we care. And so we're going to warn everybody, warning, warning, disaster, world's falling down on our ears. Everyone's going delinquent. Really? 0.26 of Canadian homeowners are in delinquent status. In fact, the balance sheet, the Stats Canada National Household Balance Sheet, that's all of us excluding corporations, excluding governments, is released every quarter, and the balance sheet of all of us in aggregate is getting stronger. And they said our ability to make our mortgage payment is going up because the percentage we pay on mortgages is going down. So let me explain or go further. I am not telling you or your listeners there's nobody delinquent. I just told you there's 0.26 delinquent, 12,900. Okay?
Right.
So those people, it's horrible. Of course it is. They can lose their house. They probably will lose their house. That's what delinquency means with a house. The bank owns your house, or the credit union,
of course,
or the lending
of course.
agent. So they can take your house. So it's a catastrophe for those people. But the problem, and I've said this to people who deal in insolvency, because I know some people that are bankruptcy insolvency trustees. And if you listen to me, you would think that just about everybody in Canada is delinquent. And it just brings back that old adage. If all you own is a hammer, then the whole entire world looks like a nail. If all you ever do is look at a small number of delinquent customers, then you start to think that everybody in the country is delinquent. This was a problem I had when I was in credit and collections many, many years ago. If all you deal all day long is with delinquent customers, you start to think that nobody is paying their bills. That's because all you're dealing with is a very, very small subset of the country, of the economy. That's the problem with Equifax. They're dealing with a tiny, tiny percentage of delinquents and are saying, look, it's going up. It's going through the roof. We're all going to lose our house. No, we're not. No, we're not. Right. And by the way, can I tell you one other thing, Rob? I was there at the bank in 1980 when mortgages went to 20, not 5, 20. The national mortgage delinquency in Canada doubled, I tell you. It doubled. It went from 0.5 to 1%. 0.5, which is much higher than today. It went from 0.5% to 1%. And that was with mortgage rates at 20%. So Equifax is telling us with rates at vastly lower than 1980 that they're going through the roof. No, they're not going through the roof. They're going up from a very tiny base, a very tiny number. So even if you get, 200 increase in absolute numbers, the base of delinquent customers, the number of raw delinquent customers is so tiny that when you get a jump of 100 or 200, you can get a percentage of a 30% increase. And everyone says, oh, my God, 1/3 of all the homeowners, they start to pay.
Right. So you're not worried. You're not worried because of the overall universe of mortgage holders. And the 99.8%, I guess, are not delinquent. Fair enough.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
When we come back, what do you think of this idea? A 25-year mortgage, not issued by a bank, but rather issued by an insurance company or a pension fund. Let's talk about that when we return with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University on Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Renewing the mortgage can be a pain. It can be time-consuming if you're switching lenders. But what about a 25-year mortgage, Professor? This is ideas out there today. Imagine a life insurance company offering a whole life mortgage, under which they would allow homeowners to move their mortgages from one home to the next, add and blend new borrowing if required, even transition to an interest-only or reverse mortgage basis as they approach retirement. Imagine a pension fund offering an inflation-indexed mortgage under which the initial monthly payments would be set 20% lower in exchange for an agreement that payments would be adjusted each year in line with inflation. If we can welcome a new class of lenders to Canadian residential mortgages, the innovation and benefits may be endless. What do you think of the idea?
I'm intrigued, Rob. And again, I want to say again, for those who write me and say, who's paying you to say this? I do not consult with anybody. And the dean does not, at Carleton, and the president does not tell me what to say or think or read. And I do not consult the banks or any financial institutions or any institutions. So let's get that out of the way. When I was mortgage manager, which I admit was a long time ago, but the rules of mortgage lending have been fundamentally the same. I mean, we've tweaked them at the margins, the debt service ratio and little things, but they're small tweaks. Fundamentally, you go to the bank, you get a huge whacking amount of money, and you pledge your house to the bank for the life of the mortgage, and if you default, they take your house. And the laws are very well, they go all the way back to the medieval ages of England that invented the laws surrounding property, real estate, and mortgages. And when I was a mortgage manager, I used to think, and I still do, that our laws in Canada specifically are quite rigid about mortgages. For example, you want to prepay it, and if it's a closed mortgage, you got whacked with a prepayment penalty. Well, I understand the idea it's offset by GICs for that same period of time, but I thought surely we could design something that's more flexible and would allow the person to go from one property to another property without having to pay off the mortgage on the old property when they sell it and then go and negotiate a new mortgage, etc. Well, that's what this guy is proposing. And making it more flexible like that, so it's almost, think of it as a HELOC, an open-ended HELOC, a revolving line of credit, whatever you want to call it, against your house. And some people would panic, probably at the superintendent of financial institutions, who are far too conservative about the regulatory framework, because they assume that everybody's going to be acting irresponsibly and go and become delinquent. And this is simply not true. There's a ton of Canadians who are very, very small t conservative about their finances. They would take advantage of such a whole life mortgage, and they'd probably pay it off quicker. That's my belief. So I'm not saying I agree with everything he proposed, but the idea of an open mortgage or a whole life mortgage that you have, and you can take it from property to property, and you have options. It's not imposed on you. You could say, well, I'll sign up for the inflation option to get a lower monthly payment, but then I'm gambling that the inflation won't take off. At least give consumers more choices.
More choice,
on their mortgages. And that's why I like this proposal. It's innovative, and it understands that the property, unlike any other form of credit, and I've been saying this for 40 years, mortgage lending is much superior to any other form of credit because it's backed up by a house that is worth more than the mortgage. And so for that reason, that's why there's such a tiny, tiny default on mortgages. So we can be more liberal, more flexible in terms of the structuring. So I applaud this person for proposing these innovative ideas.
Yeah. I mean, no lightweight used to be at RBC Capital Markets. Okay, talk to you next week. Bye-bye. It's time for our Monday Newsday political panel. Matthew Dube is back, Vice President, Proof Strategies, former NDP MP. How are you, Matthew? Welcome back.
Good, thanks, Rob. Thank you.
Good. And it's a great pleasure to welcome back Garry Keller, Vice President, StrategyCorp. Garry once ran as a candidate for the Conservative Party in the North Bay area. How are you, Garry?
I'm great.
Yeah, it's good to hear from you as well. Well, first of all, happy birthday to Prime Minister Carney. It's his birthday today. He's 61. Saturday was the first anniversary of Mark Carney becoming the 24th Prime Minister of Canada. Garry, what have you learned about Mark Carney in the past year?
Well, the one thing that I've learned about Mr. Carney is that, I, like many others, perhaps thought this was a person with not a lot of experience in politics, and he was going to find the rough and tumble of politics to be difficult. A little bit like Michael Ignatieff 2.0. The reality is he's turned out to be pretty good at politics. I think he has been good at not just determining the mood of the country, generally speaking, through his leadership accession and the election last year, but, he's been successful at, the little things in politics, whether it's, attracting floor crosses, whether it's some of the, not all, but some of the policies that he's laid out. And so I think, especially opposition parties should not take Mr. Carney like they took Michael Ignatieff. This is somebody who appears to be better at politics than he may have even let on.
Okay. A better politician than expected. Okay. What have you learned about Mark Carney in the past year, Matthew?
Well, I would echo a lot of what Garry said. I'm quite surprised. There's been what seemed like stumbles along the way as he learned the ins and outs of politics, and the fact that you can't run a caucus or a government the same way you would manage a corporation or any other sort of private sector entity. But he recovers from those admirably quickly. I think that shows he's a quick study, which I guess is not surprising considering the man's resume. The only thing I would add that maybe Garry didn't touch on, and I think it's interesting just given the perception of his predecessor, Prime Minister Trudeau, is the human side. Like, I do think he has an underrated ability to just sort of connect with everyday people, and despite where he comes from and what his background is, which is a bit of a surprise to me, to be honest. And so to your question about what I learned, that's it. I mean, there's been little snippets here and there, whether it's things that his team posts or sort of some of those more organic moments that get talked about. And, I think maybe he has a bit of eccentricity or quirkiness, but it comes across surprisingly authentic considering, the sort of banker persona that folks in my world and in Garry's world try to label him with a partisan lens, right? So, good on him, and he strikes that balance maybe a little bit better than Mr. Trudeau did of when to show those moments and when to be more serious.
Okay, so what, Matthew, would you say are some of his strengths and weaknesses?
I think the strength, is just what I said a moment ago about him being a quick study. I think, in politics, so long people dwell on repeating a mistake until they finally course correct, and then it's too late. He seems to have that ability to correct pretty quickly, to engage on the issue substantively. I think one of his weaknesses goes to something that, I also mentioned a moment ago, which is this desire to sort of see government and managing a caucus and the like as the same thing as what you would do in the private sector. And it's really not that. You're not the boss of caucus in a traditional sense. Like, you are the leader, but you also, those are your peers, the other MPs. And so, I still think every now and again we see shades of where he struggles with that a little bit. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here, especially if they're able to secure a majority on that front. But I think that might be a little bit of a blind spot for him, even though he's managed it relatively well considering being a neophyte in that respect.
All right. On strengths and weaknesses, Garry, what do you see as strengths and weaknesses?
Well, his strengths have clearly been that he's been able to parlay his background and the feeling that people have about him into something, into popularity. I think I saw a poll back in a few weeks ago that said, when Mark Carney said he was going to run for Prime Minister, the knowledge about him was very low. Who is he? What does he stand for? I don't know, right? Like the I don't know category was quite large. It made up the largest number. He has done, I think, a good job at defining himself in terms of the moment that he found himself in vis-a-vis the United States, and parlaying that into some level of electoral popularity. His weaknesses are going to be, and they have been, on the delivery side. This government has announced a lot of big things, a lot of shiny objects, a lot of new layers of bureaucracy in some cases with the Major Projects Office and the Build of Canada Homes. And the question is, can he actually deliver on all these things? And that is where all of this will fall down eventually if he can't deliver on it. He's had a first year where people have given him the benefit of the doubt, partially, too, because negotiating with Donald Trump, as we know, is like, nailing Jell-O to the wall. So Canadians are giving him the benefit of the doubt. But food inflation is still high, twice as fast rising as before Carney took off. The economy is shrinking. We saw terrible job numbers on Friday.
Yeah.
And, the economic base numbers are still
and gas
not
prices,
great.
Gary, and gas prices.
Well, gas prices, he'll get a pass on gas prices because he's not driving that, right? But on the other affordability measures, he's going to have to deliver on that, first of all, lest he give Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives a hammer to beat over the head with.
Okay. All right. We'll be right back. Does he travel too much? I also want to ask you, how is he doing at handling this Iranian situation, the war in the Middle East? Because he's had an evolving position, shall we say. Let's come back on that as well. When we return, Monday, Newsday, political panel on News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Here with Matthew Dube from Proof Strategies, from StrategyCorp, Garry Keller. Garry, does Mark Carney travel too much?
Well, that's a great question. And I think in the first year of his government, he can get away with it. But again, at some point, I think Canadians are going to start saying a couple things. One, what is this actually getting Canadians in return other than a lot of paper signed? And two, does it actually become an annoyance to Canadians? There he goes again. There he's traveling again. When's he actually going to show up in the House of Commons to actually talk about the issues of the day? I have been struck by the fact that he appears very little in the House of Commons. He doesn't really show up to question period. Of course, that's not his strength. That's not his natural milieu. But he got away with it for the first year of his time as Prime Minister, partially because of the summer and the House wasn't sitting, an election and all that. But now the rubber is going to hit the road, and it may become one of those things like it did with Justin Trudeau. There he goes again. He's traveling. What's he actually accomplishing for Canadians?
Okay. What do you think, Matthew?
Well, I definitely agree with the concept of, the thinking rather that at some point Canadians are going to ask, like, what's in it for them, right? I mean, it's great to sign MOUs or have handshakes and what other form of sort of more informal agreement, formal or informal, frankly, because I do want to give credit. There's probably a bit more formality that I'm implying to what's been going on, but nevertheless, the results, are what will speak to this ultimately, and it can't go on forever before people start asking those questions. At the same time, I do think, and this is a broader issue that we have with our politics in Canada, is I do think, and I don't want to be disrespectful to us as members of the public, but I think we're sometimes a bit small-minded about this stuff. I remember even when I was in opposition to Stephen Harper, when there was complaints about the cost of things and everything for his travel, and same thing under Justin Trudeau. But at the end of the day, there's security implications there, things like that. I know that's not your question exactly, but what I'm trying to get at is I think sometimes we forget that one of the federal government's primary responsibilities is international trade, is global affairs and foreign, relations. And so, and especially right now, and that's a large part of what got, Mark Carney elected into the role he's in now. So fully appreciate that we need to see results. But as you know, Rob, I'm always going to be a bit of an apologist for the need to have our prime ministers being statesman-like and doing these things. But obviously the proof will be in the pudding, as one might say.
All right. Garry, how do you think he's handling the Iran situation, say from the first statement to his most recent statement? How's he handled that, in your opinion?
Well, he's had about 4 different positions in the last 2.5 weeks. He actually has been quite silent in the last little while, and that actually is an opportunity for the opposition parties to actually hold him to account, not just about his Iran position, but specifically the fact that members of the Canadian Armed Forces were in harm's way, and it wasn't disclosed for 10 days. The fact that a base where Canadian Armed Forces men and women were stationed did face an attack, and the government basically covered it up. That, I think, is unforgivable, and I think there's a lot that needs to be said about that. But when it comes to the statements about Iran, he was a hawk on day one, and then he noted, well, the position with regret. I said, sorry, I regret having that one extra glass of wine at dinner the other night. I don't issue public statements about foreign policy and use the word regret about my previous statement. So he's been all over the map, and he really has two audiences. One is Donald Trump, and two is the Liberal caucus. And I think the Liberal caucus has had a lot of pushing to push Mr. Carney's position away from his original statement back on day one.
What do you think, Matthew?
Well, listen, this is not going to make for great radio, but I'm going to agree with Garry again on most everything that he said. I think it's all over. It's been all over the map. I think the silence now is not only an opportunity for the opposition, but I also think indicative that the government's realized what they should have realized at the outset, which is that Donald Trump, despite all the hot air that he blows, doesn't really have much of a plan or a strategy, and it seems to change literally minute by minute when he's has these media availabilities on Air Force One or the Oval Office or wherever. So I think obviously the 24-hour news cycle and this type of event. There's pressure on a government of a G7 country like Canada to respond almost instantly, but it's not necessarily the most prudent course of action. And I think, again, with the way President Trump has treated these situations and mismanaged them, I think it's all the more reason to be cautious. I mean, you look at, and this happened, it's not just an issue for Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre coming out and celebrating, the actions in Venezuela, acting as if it was regime change. And then, basically Maduro's right-hand woman is now in power, and there was no regime change, right? Because it was all sort of left up to Trump and whatever his thinking is, if any at all, on these issues. And so I think the government is right to be cautious and should have been from the beginning. And I think Canadians expect, a little stronger denunciation of some of the haphazard way in which this stuff is all taking place. I mean, this isn't just, jokes about calling someone governor or anything. Like, this is war. This is people's, lives and major economic impact as well. In addition to that, price of gas and all the things that we know of. So caution should be the name of the game, and it wasn't apparent. And then as a result, they were all over the map on this.
Okay. When we come back, year one, Mark Carney has the Liberals riding high in the polls, maybe just weeks away from a majority government. But as you look ahead to his second year in office, what could pop the balloon? What could end the honeymoon? We'll discuss that when we return. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
A few minutes left with our Monday Newsday political panelists today, Matthew Dube and Garry Keller. So year one, very kind to the Liberals for Prime Minister Carney. First year anniversary in office was this past Saturday. Riding high in the polls. And after a trio of by-elections coming in less than a month's time, they could have a majority government. The Liberals could have a majority government. So still very much in the honeymoon phase, I think, for this government and this prime minister. What pops that balloon? What spoils the honeymoon? Matthew, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a long honeymoon. I think it's going to make those of us who are married out there jealous to have this never-ending honeymoon. That I think
this is not like a weekend at Niagara Falls. This is not a little ride on the Maid of the Mist.
Like a year-long round the world and excursion, literally and figuratively. At any rate, it's a good question because Garry mentioned this on another topic off the top of the show when, saying what the prime minister gets a pass on and doesn't. I think Canadians are more sophisticated than they sometimes are given credit for in the punditry for recognizing what's out of the government's control and what's in its control. And I think it's when that happens, right, when they finally notice, hey, this is something that the government was going to remedy, still hasn't. The stuff with Trump is harder to tell if that's what's going to pop the honeymoon balloon. I don't think it will be. I think it really will be affordability issues, things like that. When the government comes face to face with the fact that they've been concentrated, rightfully so, on a lot of these, foreign issues, that it's become at the detriment of how Canadians are feeling. I really think that that's that's what will end up bursting the balloon. But I think the advantage the government has is a pretty weakened opposition. We know what Pierre Poilievre's numbers are. We talk about them regularly. He remains unpopular, and obviously the NDP, losing a member, another one likely to run provincially in Quebec, makes it difficult for them to mount a defense on the progressive side. So that's the other factor to consider. I think it's why Doug Ford's done so well in Ontario, right?
Right. But it could be financial issues at home. Okay. That could be the biggest stressor for the Carney Liberals. What do you think, Garry?
Affordability and the economic situation here at home, I think, are the biggest risk to them. As much as Canadians may give Mr. Carney credit for being, smart and being able to handle the economic situation, it doesn't always translate with his team. Just the other day, Gregor Robertson, the housing minister. This is the same housing minister who back in May last year said, well, housing prices aren't really the problem in this country. Well, we didn't see him for a number of weeks after that as he was taken behind the woodshed. Now, this week in the House of Commons, he said, well, the reason why Canadians can't afford to price a house is the war in the Middle East. Excuse me? No, sorry. Strike two. That doesn't cut it. The reason, we don't buy lumber and we don't buy concrete from Iran. It was a swing and a miss for the housing minister, and the AI minister out in the House of Commons the other day saying, well, the reason the job numbers in February are so bad is the war in Iran. It's like, well, wait a second. These are February's numbers. The war didn't start till March. So this communication around the cost of living, and if Liberals appear to be out of touch, will be a challenge because they were elected to help solve some of these problems.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you to the both of you. Great to hear from you today. Speak soon. All the best.
Rob. Great to be with you.
Matthew Dube, Vice President, Proof Strategies, former NDP MP, and Garry Keller, Vice President of StrategyCorp, ran as a candidate for the Conservative Party. I'm Rob Snow. Talkback is coming up. Carney and the economy. We're going to talk about that with your help right after the news on Talkback today to start the week. This is News Radio. Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today, Prime Minister Mark Carney and his handling of the economy. Here's what we want to know. Let's start with this. We'll see where the conversation takes us today. Mark Carney's been the Prime Minister of Canada for a year. What is your opinion on how he's managing the economy? Do you think he's doing a good job at managing the economy, an okay job, a so-so job, or is he doing a bad job? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. What would you say? How is he doing at managing the economy after 1 year as Prime Minister of this country? Because he was, after all, the person with the spectacular resume. Former governor of the Bank of Canada, governor of the Bank of England, used to work at Goldman Sachs, chair of Brookfield, sat on the board of directors of many, many companies all over the world. He wowed the crowd at Davos. Whenever he visits another country, journalists in those countries are just dying to ask him questions. He's the person with the Ivy League education and the PhD in economics. He is the person who led the party that Canadians decided would be the best option to lead this country in a turbulent time for the economy because of Trump, because of tariffs, and now, throw on top of that a dramatic increase in fuel prices because of the war in the Middle East. And it's been Prime Minister Carney's job for the last year to try and navigate all of this. And it's his job to make the big decisions that are in the best interests of the Canadian economy and in the best interests of all Canadians. So how's he doing? How's he doing, in your opinion? Doing a good job, an okay job, a so-so job, a bad job? 1-833-668-2577. The inflation rate was released this morning, but it's the middle of March, and this is a report that captures what inflation was like in February. So it's kind of like looking in the rearview mirror. And it doesn't take into account the very dramatic increase in the price of gas all across the country. But this morning, nevertheless, it was reported that inflation in February was running at an annualized rate of 1.8%, 1.8%, which is good. And that's down from the previous month when the inflation rate was 2.3%. All good. But the main driver of that decrease was a drop in fuel prices. Gas prices were down 14%. Prices for natural gas were down 17%. But fuel prices apparently giveth and taketh away. And next month's report will show something very, very different. Because across the country, gas prices are up, 25 to 30% just in the last few weeks. How's that going to be impacting the economy? Can't be good. But do you blame that on the Prime Minister? And according to this report today, food inflation is still running much higher than overall inflation, 5.4%. Beef prices up another 14%. Shelter costs up again, up another 1.5% after increasing 1.7% the month before. They just keep going up. I mean, almost everything that StatsCan measures for this report, with the exception of fuel, rose in the most recent month. And then on Friday of last week, there was a jobs report. It was, quote, ugly from top to bottom, is how one of the country's leading economists described it. Ugly from top to bottom. The economy lost 84,000 jobs. Most of them were full-time jobs and most of them in the private sector. And the unemployment rate increased to 6.7%. And StatsCan said when you look over the last year, there's been almost no job growth in Canada. Employment is little changed, it said. And a worrying trend is that when people lose their jobs, they are staying unemployed for longer. There are 1.5 million Canadians who are unemployed, and almost 23% of them have been unemployed for more than 27 weeks or more than 6 months or longer. So the ranks of the unemployed are growing, and more of them are unemployed for longer periods of time. Canadians are still worried about the cost of living, anxious about housing affordability. Construction of new homes is still half of what the government promised it would be. There's been bad news in the auto sector, the forestry sector, the steel and aluminum sectors, job losses, plant closures, mills closing, auto exports way down. None of that is great news. On the bright side, Mr. Carney points to higher wages. Wages were up last month by almost 4%. The average hourly wage in this country is $37.56 an hour. And Mr. Carney also says when it comes to trade with the United States, Canada has the best deal. Compared with all the other countries that the U.S. has done deals with, he says Canada still has the best deal, even though we don't have a finalized deal. And he's been all over the world trying to swing new deals with China and India and Japan. And some of those details have resulted in tariff relief for Canadian industries. And if you want a Chinese-made EV, there's no tariffs on those anymore. Maybe you'll be buying one soon. His government signed an MOU with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith being very pleased to do so, because it could include someday another new pipeline to the West Coast. Mr. Carney might point to an income tax. He cut the consumer carbon tax. He increased the GST rebate. He is starting to reduce the size of the federal public service. It's been 1 year. 1 year this past Saturday. It's the Prime Minister's birthday today. But there's an old line in politics. It's the economy, stupid. So if it's all about the economy, if governments rise and fall because of the economy, how is this Prime Minister doing 1 year into the job at managing ours, at managing Canada's economy? Have your say at 1-833-668-2577. That's our call-in line. If you've never called before, just mention that. We'll make your call a priority. How is Prime Minister Carney doing at managing the Canadian economy? On Talkback today on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Mark Carney has been the Prime Minister for a year, and there's an old line in politics. It's the economy, stupid. How is Mark Carney doing at managing the economy? What would you say? Would you say he's doing a good job, a so-so job, a bad job? Just what would you say? 1-833-668-2577. And share your opinion on Talkback today. Lots of lines available there to start the week together. Mike in Dartmouth is up first. Hello, Mike.
How you doing today, buddy?
Yeah, very good, Mike. Good to hear from you. What's your opinion?
It is my opinion. I think he's doing an absolutely horrible job.
Why do you say that?
Not a lot has changed for most people's personal lives. We are on the verge of Canada breaking apart. We're ready to lose a province, which, people are kind of downplaying it, but it's there, and it's a possibility. Trudeau did nothing to speak to Alberta or try to mend any fences, and I don't find Carney's doing much about it either. He's never in the country. That is an issue with me. I think you're the leader of the country. You should at least spend more time in your country than you do everywhere else. I'm not impressed with this whole thing with China. This is a guy that said himself, this is a dangerous country to be involved in, and then goes over there and starts making deals with them. I don't want to do this to you, Rob, but I do watch Moose on the Loose and some of these other things, and it is very evident that his portfolio with Brookfield is getting stronger with some of these deals he's making abroad. No, I don't think he's a good prime minister whatsoever, and I don't think his interests are in the people of Canada. Where is he from originally?
He's from the north originally, from Northwest Territories.
Okay.
And went to school in Edmonton.
Yeah, I don't think he likes Canada. Then again, he's had a lot of complaints from the different countries that he's gone to and been involved in. So, no. And
you don't give him high marks for his economic stewardship so far?
Yeah, nothing really. Like I said,
nothing really.
The majority of Canadians, life hasn't changed. It's actually, gotten a little worse, and I don't see anything that he's done here that has really improved the life
that has
of
benefited
Canadians.
you economically. Okay, Mike. Thank you, Mike. 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Barry. Is in Halifax. Hello, Barry. Across the bridge there. Hi, Barry.
One concern I have, several concerns, but one concern I have about Carney is the fact that we're going to enter another fire season, and we have huge losses as far as forests are concerned in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I've mentioned to you before about a new plant in Calgary that's producing what are considered the best water bombers in the world, and they've been selling them to Europe and all other countries except Canada. Never made any orders until Premier of Manitoba ordered 3. He now has to wait until 2032 for delivery. So if Carney's spending all this money, why doesn't he spend some money on, I know it falls under the provinces, but I think it's so serious now it should be a federal issue. Spend some money and double the production, and this time make sure that they all stay in Canada.
All right. I would point out that in your province, the Nova Scotia government just announced that it's bought or leased, I guess, 4 fixed-wing water bombers. Air Tractor AT-802 Fire Boss fixed-wing water bombers.
Yeah,
just
they're smaller ones.
Last week.
Yeah, New Brunswick has those for years, and they're smaller.
Yeah.
They don't even come close to the ones made in Calgary.
$6.8 million contract.
Yeah, well, it's there's a site that shows all the fires burning in Canada, and in the summertime, and it's accumulative. It shows the forest that's already been burned, and I'll tell you, it scares the pants off of you when you look at it. It's incredible, and we're not going to get those trees replaced for another 80 or 100 years.
Back to the original question. It's the economy, stupid. That old line, James Carville from the Clinton years. It's the economy, stupid. So if we're judging this prime minister 1 year into the job on his management of the economy, how do you think he's doing?
Well, it's been tough with the states, of course.
Yes.
There's not a whole lot of things he can do about that because Trump is changing his mind every 5 seconds. But the thing that never seems to get mentioned by the media is the debt. Deficits, but not the debt. And he is certainly bumping up that debt pretty high. I don't know what it is, but I know it's a incredible number, and it'll be
national debt is somewhere between 1.5 and 1.7 trillion.
Yep.
Just the national debt of Canada, let alone that doesn't include all the provincial debt, of course. Okay,
yeah,
thank you. Thank you. You're worried about the size of the debt. Fair enough. And he is spending a lot of money. Thank you for your call. 1-833-668-2577. It's the economy, stupid. So how is Mark Carney doing in managing the economy? He's been on the job for 1 year. How would you describe the job he's done in the last year? 1-833-668-2577 and have your say on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Mark Carney's been the prime minister for a year. How is he doing in managing the economy? Which was the main job that he was hired to do, was manage the economy. If you think back to the election of a year ago, people trusted him more with Canada's economy than the other participants in that election. That's why the Liberals came close to winning a majority government. So how has he done in the year since? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on Monday. Doug in Halifax. Thanks for calling, Doug. What's your opinion, Doug?
Hi, Rob. Thanks for taking my call. And number one, we appreciate you here in Nova Scotia very much. We love your show. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's very kind of you.
In my opinion,
on the economy.
Rob, yes, you're welcome, sir. In my opinion, I think Harry's doing a great job. Number one, he inherited a mess from his predecessor. Number two, it takes time. It takes time to make things better, Rob, and I think he's doing what he has to do. And, let's give him some time.
Okay. What do you say to people? Well, I don't like that he travels so much. He's outside of the country so much, and there hasn't been, much improvement in my life. If anything, things have gotten worse. We've heard that expressed already today. What do you think about an opinion like that?
Well, he has no choice. Given the situation with our friends to the south, he has no choice but to go and find trade somewhere else. So I understand that part. It makes sense. I mean, I do appreciate the previous caller when he said he should be in the country more. I think so too. At the same time, he has to go out there and find more trade because our situation with the United States is not good. So that's how I.
So when he goes and he does a deal with China, or when he goes and does a deal with India, some Canadians have problems with us doing deals with China. They don't like China. India, there are questions about India and foreign interference, intimidation, organized crime, extortion, threatening Sikhs in Canada, this sort of thing. People aren't too crazy that we're cozying up to India. What do you think about that? You're okay with that?
Well, yes and no. A couple of points.
Yes and no.
The first one is, the old saying is, keep your friends close and your enemies even closer.
All right.
And number two, Rob, China already knows what you and I do every day because of our phones. Don't think otherwise. Of course they do. And as long as you're doing everything that you're supposed to do, hopefully we're all good people and we're not breaking any laws, then it's all good. It doesn't matter if they know where I'm going because I'm not doing anything wrong.
Okay. So, but generally speaking, you would give him high marks for his economic management, just given the difficulties we're having with the Trump administration right now, which you're not blaming him for.
Correct. At this point, I would give him Rob probably a B plus, and let's see where we are in a couple of years, and maybe I'll give him a better grade. Let's see.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Very good opinion. 1-833-668-2577. Love to hear more of them right after the latest breaking news on Mark Carney's management of the Canadian economy as Prime Minister of Canada. He's had the job for a year. What would you say? Good job, so-so. Bad job. This is Talkback on News Radio. After 1 year on the job, how would you describe the job that Mark Carney has done in managing the Canadian economy? The inflation report was out today. The Bank of Canada will make an interest rate announcement on Wednesday. Economic news will be big news this week. Let's go to Kurt in Calgary. Hello, Kurt. Hi, Kurt.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, Kurt. Good to hear from you. What's your opinion, please?
So I'd like to say that considering everything that's happening in the world, as you stated, both near and far, it's really impossible to know if our economy could be any better or would have been any worse with some other leader. I mean, too often people complain about somebody that may in fact have been victim to overwhelming circumstances. I mean, look at the world. Can you complain that the economy is not doing well?
Well, it certainly has a lot of things going against it right now. The latest being these very high fuel costs, of course. That's not great for the economy, that's for sure.
It's not just fuel costs. It's these tariffs, and it's many, many things. So there's no way to know if it would have been better with somebody else or not.
Okay,
so,
but is there something that he's done that, say, you approve of? And if so, what would that be? Or is there something that he hasn't done that maybe you think he should be doing?
That's very hard to say. Anyway, I would like to say that the fact that he is abroad much of the time, I can't say that's a bad thing. I'm sure he keeps track of what's happening back home and where are you going to do things, here or where it's needed to be done. So I don't agree with the people that complain, oh, he's far away and things like that. But it's impossible to say. I mean, these things have long-term impact, everything. So just because something quick may not have been done to fix something doesn't mean that long-term it would have been a good idea. So I'm not politicians, and I can't say what should happen and should have happened. Right. I just say I don't think anybody could
be doing anything more or less, I guess you could say.
I don't think anybody could say things like that, and I think you should know that. And questions like this, I feel they're just inflammatory and distracting, considering they're so.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. He's a politician. He has to face the electorate. He was hired to manage the economy. He's been on the job for 1 year. You know, let's put it to the test and ask people how he's doing. I think it's a totally legitimate question. I disagree with you there.
It's correct that he's been for a year, but you cannot gauge his performance considering everything that's happening. So if you can't, then why bother?
Well, there is always lots of stuff happening. There's always lots of stuff happening, sir. It's not like the world is an uneventful, boring place most of the time. There's always stuff that's happening. Okay, you think it's an extraordinary time. Fair enough. I'll move along. You say there's no evidence anybody else could do any better. Well, let's hear if there's an opposing view to that. Let's go to James is up first. James is in Calgary as well. Hello, James.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate you doing that. I'm a first-time caller.
I appreciate that.
I don't gauge this on what's happening to me. I gauge this on what's going to be happening to my kid. So with the deficits and the amount of money that we're spending and throwing away on whatever it is that we're throwing away, I'm not going to have to pay for that very long. My kid's going to have to pay for it for the entirety of his life. And so when you ask me whether or not Carney has done a good job, I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say no because he was elected based upon being the savior of Canada from Trump. And when he got into office, things got worse because he couldn't control the ranks of the provinces. Look what happened with Ford with his ads. They keep on poking the bear and expecting a different reaction from him, and it's never going to happen. When it comes to the policies of the country, we have an infrastructure bank that's giving money to China. Like, what is going on? Why is he saying that we're not supporting the situation in Iran, but we're giving support to Lebanon? I mean, what is going on here? Is this a popularity contest, or is this someone that's supposed to be managing the economy of our country, not everyone else's? I mean, they called him Carnage Carney for a reason, and nobody took that to heart. Nobody did the backup on him before he got elected. He got elected as
I never heard that. Carnage Carney. I've never heard of that.
In the UK. In the UK, they called him Carnage Carney. Yeah, they did. Okay. You can look it up.
Okay.
I look at it on the basis of what's going to happen to my kid. And right now, it's not looking good. With the deficits that we're running, with the amount of promises that are absolutely incomprehensible, and there's no way that they can come through with them. They know it. I live in Alberta. I lived in BC for 16 years. In the last few years, I've seen the carnage the ED's put BC through, the amount of mills that have closed because of policies, because he wants to look good. I mean, these people work for us, not the other way around. And at what point are we going to say?
So I asked the previous caller, is there something he hasn't done that you think he should be doing? Is there something he's done that you like or don't like? What is it? You think he's a big spender? That's what bothers you? He's such a big spender?
No, he needs to not promise what he can't deliver, right? That's the big thing. Like, for me, if you're going to say, I'm going to come into power, I'm going to rein this in, I'm going to make a deal with Trump, and then make it explode, that doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for a lot of Canadians. When he says that he's going to get the economy under control, and then we have 80,000 full-time job losses in a month. What is that saying for him? When he says that he's going to push infrastructure projects through as fast as humanly possible, and not a single one has been approved or is in production. That, like, for me, if you're going to sit there and spout out a whole bunch of stuff to me, you better come through. Because if you don't come through, you can look as good as you want on the stage, but at some point in time, you're going to have to face my kid. And you're going to have to explain to him why it is he's paying 50% income tax into a country because of lackluster spending and a whole bunch of promises to get elected that you could never come through with.
All right. Thank you for your call. There you go. Two pretty opposing views there, with Kurt saying, could anybody be doing any better right now? And James saying, yeah, I think so. So far, it's a lot of talk and not much action. What about you? How is Mark Carney doing at managing this economy of ours? G7 economy, $2 trillion economy. He's in charge of it. How's he doing? 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's go to Pat in Kitchener. Find out how Pat thinks Mark Carney's doing at managing the economy. Hi, Pat. You're on the air. What's your opinion?
Thanks. I think that Carney optimized for the wrong crisis at the wrong time for ordinary Canadians. I think he's done a good job on the geopolitical file in that Canada is viewed as a good partner by other countries. Now, whether this translates into foreign investment into Canada remains to be seen. But Carney has done, I would say, a very poor job on the affordability crisis front and doing anything to really increase Canada's GDP per capita. In my view, I think you would have seen the inverse with a Pierre win, greater positive impact on affordability by repealing some of the anti-growth policies, for example, in the energy field. This would generate more wealth in the short term from our natural resources. And I think he would claw back some of the environmental policies that feeds into increasing the costs of many of the products and services that we consume.
So you'd like to see, an end to things like the so-called no pipelines bill, West Coast tanker
100%.
ban,
Yeah, 100%. We need more
industrial carbon tax.
Right. Yep. Yeah, we need more private sector investment into energy, and we need to reduce regulation.
So what about on the affordability front? Because you say that's where he's kind of missing the boat, the everyday costs that Canadians are facing.
That's right. So I think that if he would have reduced these anti-growth policies right when he got into office, it would have essentially increased the output of energy. It would have signaled to private companies to increase energy output. And right now, oil's at around $100 a barrel. And so you were seeing a lot more economic activity and GDP growth in the short term, rather than potentially seeing it in the long term through foreign investment, but it's not translated into anything for the average Canadian at this point in time. It may in the future, but I think that Pierre's policies would have translated in quicker, essentially GDP per capita
quicker wins
growth.
on the affordability front, cost of living pressures. Okay, thank you. Peter in Bedford, Nova Scotia, up next. Hi, Peter.
Rob, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Peter. What would you say on his handling of the economy? How's Prime Minister Carney done over the last year?
We can't actually just rate him on the last year because he was Trudeau's number one economic advisor for the previous 5 years. So technically what we can look back to do the judge, if you want to do a fair assessment, it has to go back 6 years, even though he's only been Prime Minister for one. And from the man's own mouth, he said, judge me on the price of groceries. And then I'd like to remind, and that's over 7% inflation rate. And then I would remind Canadians that he was hired to do one specific job only. He was the man who could take his background, his central banking experience, and Canada would crash to a halt, possibly cease to exist if he wasn't able to negotiate good trade deals with the U.S. And that file has been a catastrophic failure. So when we judge him on groceries, and we judge him on inflation, and we judge him on trade agreements with the U.S., in an unbiased fashion, and you look at this and you look strictly at the numbers, he's a colossal failure.
All right. So what do you think that he could be doing that he's not doing? What would you like to see him do that would be better for the economy?
Well, number one, he has to deliver on a trade agreement that's satisfactory with the U.S., irregardless of how many trips he makes around the world, trying to backstop loans and financial propositions that benefit Brookfield Asset Management. He needs to concentrate on doing business with the U.S. No matter what happens, no matter what trade agreements he puts in with other countries, we're separated from them by something it's an inconvenient thing called the Atlantic Ocean. It's an impossibility to accomplish what he's trying to accomplish. And because as a central banker and being a boardroom person, he's used to issuing orders and people following them. He's not what you would call an expert strategist when it comes to being able to negotiate agreements. Donald Trump is not an easy person to do business with, but the reality of it is we can't throw our number one trading partner under the bus because this man doesn't have the skill set in order to be able to deliver. And you have to ask yourself, well, people have to say, well, Trump's not easy to get along with. Well, Trump's put together dozens and dozens of high-end business deals with other countries. The only country that he's failing to do business with is Mark Carney. And once again, that was the number one thing that got him elected in the last election. I'd like to bring up another quick point, too. In your previous guest, you'd said, what could Mark Carney possibly do to get him unseated? And I was in a meeting just recently here with a number of people in the real estate industry. And their number one concern right now is that if Mark Carney gets a majority, the federal liberals are going to bring in an equity tax on your home.
I don't know. They've studied it in the past. It would be politically, it'd be very, very unpopular. I mean, deeply unpopular. I mean, people marching in the streets in Ottawa, unpopular. It would be, there might be a protest in Ottawa so big over that, it might put the Freedom Convoy to shame. I know it's been studied. They've looked at it. They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars at the federal government level looking at some kind of equity tax. I just don't think politically they could ever do it. Interesting, though, that you brought that up. 1-833-668-2577. Mark Carney. 1 year into the job. It's the economy, stupid, is the old line in politics. So how's he doing in the biggest thing that matters, the management of the economy? What's your opinion? This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Lorna up next in Calgary on the line for Talkback. Hi, Lorna.
Yes. Hi, Rob,
Hi, Lorna.
and thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I've been listening to a lot of your people who have contacted you, and I find that there's a mixture. And even though I'm not a Carney fan, yes, he has done some things that are good, but I have a list of things that he should be taking care of, and he seems to be more interested in, how would I put it, flying around the world. And to me, it's someone who's like taking his resume out to all the countries to look for future jobs. Just saying. But here in Canada, we are suffering food prices, housing prices, medical issues, and it's not as if he's addressing them. They're happening. He gives us platitudes. I'm not happy about his kind of like the memorandum of understanding with Alberta concerning the pipeline. He signed it because nothing's been done. It's just a piece of paper. He hasn't done anything to promote it beyond that signing of that document. Where is he on that? He hasn't done anything. And, that's huge for Alberta. Again, as some of a lot of the callers had said about traveling, I agree. He should be spending more time at home because we're not seeing those deals come in. I mean, he's spending thousands and thousands of dollars traveling to promote. Is he promoting Canada or is he promoting himself? And that's the thing with him. He reminds me of a guy we used to call Teflon Man. Nothing seems to stick to him. And
maybe he would say, he's trying to diversify Canada's trade. He's trying to open new markets for Canadian goods, and that requires international travel. Yeah?
Somewhat. No? But
okay.
Out of those, how long has he been traveling and how much has he been in the country? The one thing that I would like to see him do is invest, instead of sending billions of dollars all over to these different countries, is taking that money and using it to, for example, I'm going to give, because I'm in Alberta, build refineries here so that we actually, instead of shipping our crude to the United States where they buy it cheap from us and then they sell it back for raised prices. We should be producing and creating so that if we have oil that we've actually created, we can sell it across Canada. If Quebec starts digging their mines up and we build factories there, great. Same with Manitoba and Saskatchewan and BC. I mean, let's invest in our provinces. Let's invest in utilizing our natural resources, and then we can supply Canada and also getting it out to the market.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your opinion. Thank you for all of your opinions in that hour. Full hour just ahead. We can pick up on this. Love to hear from you. How is Mark Carney doing at managing the economy after 1 year as Prime Minister of the country? 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio. So we have been asking today about Mark Carney, 1 year on the job, and how is he doing, in your opinion, at managing the Canadian economy? Referencing that old line in politics, it's the economy, stupid. So how's he doing at managing the economy? Is he doing a good job, an okay job, a so-so job, a bad job? The Canadian stock market has done well in the last year since Mark Carney became Prime Minister. I was looking at the TSX main index today, up 33% in the last year. Going back to Mark Carney being first sworn in, up 33%. That's not bad. That's not bad. That's a lot better than the Dow. It's up 13% over that time. It's better than the NASDAQ, which is up 25% in the last year. It's better than the S&P 500, up 18% since Mark Carney became Prime Minister. So he's been good for the stock market, but has he been good for the economy? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. Let's get to Robin is in Calgary. Thank you for waiting, Robin, and being patient. You're on the air.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I want to say happy birthday to Mark Carney. Never voted Liberal in my life. Always was Conservative, but that's not saying it's right or anything. But never voted in the last 3 or 4 elections, however long that's been. But I would like to say he's doing a good job and give him some time. Like 1 year? No, people, give him some time. I go along with some of your callers of all good things they're saying. But, yeah, give him some time. A year's not very much. He'll get to it. And he's got helpers.
Okay, but he is there something that he's done, do you think, that has been good for the economy? Like if you could say, what's he done? What's he done?
To be honest with you, I'm sure there is. I can't think of anything myself, but I'm not that knowledgeable with my grade 3 and CS degree, but common sense. But yeah, no, I'm sure he's done some good. And as far as him traveling, well, what the hell is he supposed to do? I mean, he could stay home and be in Parliament every day, but that'd get boring too. I mean, he's got to travel to make some world deals, and I think he'll do all right in the end. I think he'll do all right.
As you say, you've mostly voted Conservative in the past, but you think he's doing an okay job, always, and then we have to be patient.
Always did, but that's not. I'm out in Poilievre's riding out here in Damien's, but it's always been Conservative. But yeah, and I was an ex-farm boy sort of thing. But I don't. People jump on him, but give him some more time, and we'll be a judge later on. I mean, the previous spending $127 billion. I stated that one day, and you didn't maybe quite understand, but it was 92 in the spring and 127 billion. Well, if we had that money back, we could, he'd be able to make some decisions and spend some money on some different things too. But I think he'll get to it anyways. And I don't know, maybe we got to do like the U.S. We got to print some money. I don't know, because it's a tough call. And a lot of these people that complain, put a suit on, try it, dress up and see if you can do it.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. You're very forgiving, I must say. You're very forgiving for Mark Carney, and you're a very patient person. I just wonder, I'm just throwing this out here as we wait for some more calls, okay? Yeah. Whether there are some, troubling signs, and I thank you for your call, Robin. We'll talk again soon. I just wonder if maybe there's reason for concern. There's a report in one of the papers today. Global Mail has a story today. It's been picked up in other news outlets across the country with a more localized focus. People with pretty good credit ratings falling behind in their mortgage payments. And we talked about this with Professor Ian Lee earlier in the show. He didn't seem all that concerned about it, but is there reason to be concerned when the credit rating agency Equifax says it's seeing growing signs of financial stress even among more creditworthy borrowers? It talks about mid-tier borrowers, what are known as near-prime borrowers, and they're missing their mortgage payments by at least 90 days. And it says across the country, the delinquency rate among those people is increased 31% in the last year. Now, it's still quite low. It's less than 1% overall. But in a statement, Equifax says, quote, "There is an alarming acceleration of financial stress that is rapidly expanding to more creditworthy borrowers. And that is an indication that a severe payment shock is actively spreading from some subprime borrowers into the established middle class. I mean, is that worrisome? The people who normally wouldn't have trouble paying their mortgages are now having trouble paying their mortgages. They're not great in numbers, but their numbers are growing. Evidence of, I guess you could call the renewal crunch. A lot of people who could maybe swing mortgage payments on an $800,000 house when interest rates were below 3% or even closer to 2%. Now, when interest rates get closer to 4% or even 5%, as they were for a period of time last year, it's a different story. And they struggle to make the mortgage payment. Quote, higher monthly mortgage payments combined with higher grocery bills and other living expenses are eating away at Canadians' paychecks and savings. Is that cause for concern? And what does that say about the management of the economy? Have your say, 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback. Welcome to hour number 2. Mark Carney was hired and elected to navigate a lot of this economic turbulence. He's been there for a year. Is the economy stupid? How's he doing? How's he doing, in your opinion? This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
How is Mark Carney doing, in your opinion, in managing the economy as Prime Minister of Canada? He's been there a year now. Andrew is in Waterloo. Thanks for calling, Andrew. You're up next. What's your opinion, Andrew?
I think he's been doing an incredible job considering he's not a career politician. His resume and his career isn't going from political party to political party. It's been sitting in negotiating rooms, sitting in boardrooms, speaking to international businessmen, international banks. Okay, everybody's upset that we've made China deals and India deals, but true business acumen dictates that you sell your resources or product to the highest bidder. These are the highest bidders. These products that are being sold aren't being sold because we don't have an abundance. There's a market, and that's why we're there.
Sure. So you forgive him. You forgive him because a lot of people have been critical of his international travel, that he's traveling all over the world. He's not getting the bread and butter issues at home. That's the main criticism. The affordability crunch at home.
That's the beauty, is that he's the Prime Minister. He's to represent us internationally and have our international interests best portrayed. We have ministers and we have premiers to take care of local problems. He is the leader of the country. And when was the last time in this past year have you seen him on a beach or on a boat or hanging out and relaxing? Everywhere he travels is for the betterment of our country. It hasn't been for nothing. Right? And the fact that people will compare, why is Pierre Poilievre even still a thing? Why is he still a thing? It just blows my mind. It blows my mind.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Why is he still a thing? I don't quite follow you.
I don't understand. I don't understand in our entire beautiful country full of incredible human beings how that one human is still the leader of our Conservative Party in the opposition. We have nobody else who is capable of forming any better speech patterns or thought. It's saddening. It's saddening.
Okay, well, that sounds more personal than anything else.
Yeah, that's 100%. But I believe personally, Carney he's looking out for the betterment of the country 100%. And he's a trained negotiator. That's the impressive. Right. That's the thing to remember.
But if he's a trained negotiator, okay, just on that point then, if he's a trained negotiator, why hasn't he been able to negotiate with the United States and have some kind of breakthrough with the United States? Or do you blame that all on Trump?
No, they're having conversations. They just haven't had breakthroughs. The point of a negotiation is to have a conversation and find a place. Just because he's been in business for a year doesn't mean that he has to have one right now. Most people don't. Trump didn't have the other one dictated for two years until his presidency was over?
Yeah, but I would say back in April, he said he would get a deal done by July of last year. It's now March of this year. Still no deal. And some tariffs are higher. Some tariffs are higher. Right.
And he's been met with roadblock after roadblock, right?
Okay. All right. You think he's doing a great job? Thank you. That's the question that we're asking. And can't understand the appeal of Pierre Poilievre. Fair enough. 1-833-668-2577. 3-4 lines available there. Wait won't be too long. Let's get to John. He's up next. Also in Calgary today. Hi, John.
Yeah. Hey, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, very good, John. Thank you. What would you say?
I think that, you need to compare them a little bit to what we had before. So I think there's marked improvement versus his predecessor. I think there's a lot of foundational things that he needed to reset, and he's done some of that. But I think there's still a lot more for him to do in country than he has, and picking up the pace on getting major infrastructure built and built efficiently in the country, and to stem the flight of capital that's going out of this country that's been leaving at a record pace for the last 10 years, I think is important. So I have no problem. He's abroad. I think you need to widen your trading partners, and you need to be actively engaged on that basis what we've seen going on down south. But I think there's still a lot more that he can be doing domestically on interprovincial trade, on getting major infrastructure built. Last caller, I think, was a little bit rose-colored glasses there around the job that he's been doing. I think there's a lot more domestically that needs to be done, and it needs to be done quicker. So I think first year is getting the infrastructure in place, getting a lot of the foundational things in place, but now is the time to act, and still way too slow. Still moving way too slow, and we don't even have to get started with taxes and overhauling what some of that looks like as well on your cost of living question there before.
Right. So you'd like things to be moving. You're willing to give them a break, but you'd like things to be moving a lot faster than they're currently moving. Fair enough?
Well, that's right. Yeah. Short leash, but
short leash.
But yeah, he needs to. Proof is in the pudding, right? And we need action in this country to get things back on track.
Okay, thank you for your call. Lots of lines available, folks. Lots of time to take your calls. 1-833-668-2577. After a year on the job, hired to manage a $2 trillion economy, how is this Prime Minister doing at managing Canada's economy? Our question of the day on big week for economic news. Inflation report out today. Food inflation, 5.4%. Overall inflation rate, 1.8%. A nice steak, nothing but a distant dream for so many. Beef prices up 14% again. Gosh almighty. And then on Wednesday, we'll get the Bank of Canada on the interest rate environment. None of this really is going to be reflective of the recent spike in gas prices, up 25 to 30% over the last few weeks because of the situation in the Middle East, making those affordability pressures even worse for a lot of people. 1-833-668-2577. This is what economic managers are hired to deal with. He's the most prominent one in the country. So tell us, how's he doing? In your opinion, this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Rita is a first-time caller calling from Cambridge, Ontario. Hello, Rita. Good
Hi,
to hear
how
from
are
you
you?
today? I'm good. How do you think Mark Carney is doing at managing the economy?
I think he's doing a good job.
And why do you say that?
Well, I think he's done a lot of things. Of course, he's traveling all over and making new trade agreements and whatnot. And I mean, you can't just say hey guys, we're here, we'll take your business, and they're just going to come. You have to have the trade deals in place to help the businesses do the trade. So I think he's accomplishing that.
Right. So the criticism that he gets, well, he's always on a plane, he's always traveling somewhere, he's always in some far off location. You're saying, well, that's his job right now, is to go around and sell Canada.
He has done an awful lot, but I think we were probably way behind on that, right? Because he's got to really pick up the pace. So when he talks about we have to do things at a speed we've never done before, this is all part of it, right?
All right.
So for right now, he probably has to do that. I would think as time goes on, there's probably less trips abroad.
What about the financial well-being of Canadians? And by that, I mean more pocketbook type stuff, like being able to pay the mortgage, being able to afford the rent, the affordability issues, grocery prices, those sorts of things, let alone gas prices. You can't blame him for gas prices. He didn't start a war in the Middle East.
That's right. Well, I think on some of that was when he put forth his budget last year, there was a tax cut supposed to come for the middle class, but because the opposition parties wouldn't vote and pass the bill or the budget, then nobody saw the tax cuts. So when everybody's saying, well, my life's not any better, it's like, well, he presented with a tax cut, but with the collective of the opposition not putting it through, then nobody can receive it. So it's not really
the budget has passed now. The budget has passed now, and the Conservatives did cooperate and help pass that GST improvement on the rebate as well for people who get the rebate on the GST. That's going up.
When you're asking people in the last year, that's not fair because it's just been passed now. So,
all right.
And a couple other things I just wanted to comment from, other callers here, on the Trump thing and negotiating the deal with the states. There's always been a lot of comments on your show about, he doesn't have his elbows up, his elbows down or whatever. And I thought if you listen to what the U.S. is always saying that Canada's nasty and Canada's hard to deal with, well, in my opinion, that's the way he's got his elbows up, because he's not willing to just take anything that they're throwing at us and saying, yeah, okay, we'll sign, we'll get the deal. He said many times, we're only going to sign a deal if it's good for us. So I don't know why, some of the callers are saying, why hasn't he got the deal? Well, look at some of the other countries that jumped, and they all regretted it after. And then Trump threw more tariffs at them anyways, and they're like, hey, I thought we had a deal.
We thought we had a deal. All right. Yeah, that's a fair point. Thank you for your call. Be a first-time caller in Cambridge there, Rita. Great to hear from you today. Back right after the latest breaking news, everyone, with more of your calls on the economy and the job the Prime Minister is doing and managing it. This is News Radio. If you're just joining us, we've been discussing the performance of the economy under Prime Minister Mark Carney, who's been the Prime Minister for about a year now. How's he doing at managing the economy? Good job? So-so job? Bad job? Opinions all over the place on this one today. Let's hear from Simon. He's in Calgary today. Hello, Simon.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome. What would you say?
I think he's done, for me, it's mixed. I think he's working to his strengths. I think the reason why he's traveling around and doing a lot of these international politicking is because that's what he did as a banker, and that's what he's good at. I think domestically, the urgency for these nation-building projects that he seems to champion all the time isn't quite there for me personally. And I think he's got a lot of work to do on the domestic side of things. But there's a learning curve. And, he's trying his best. I'd give him an A for effort right now and C+ for execution.
All right. So what more would you like to see from him then? to get that grade up?
Yeah, well, like I said, I think those domestic nation-building projects. Obviously, I'm in Alberta, so the oil and gas sector is important. Getting those pipelines in that he's promised. I'd like to see a bit more urgency with the military-industrial buildup that he has promised and has oriented so much money towards. I think there needs to be a lot of urgency with that, and I think there's a lot of potential with that, but he's got to get moving on it. And I'd like to see him be a little bit more cunning, even though he has initiated some really important things, like this sort of middle power alliance that he seems to be doing abroad. Canadians were attacked, as part of Iran's retaliation. I think there was potential there for him to get a deal with Trump. And I'm not saying that we should be on the front lines fighting with Americans, but we could be supporting them logistically. We could be doing a lot of things that would probably...
So, for example, just on that point, Trump has made this call, we need help patrolling the Strait of Hormuz, and we're going to remember who helps us and who doesn't help us. You think there's maybe an opportunity for Canada?
Yeah, there might be.
Capacity?
I don't know if we have... I don't know if we have the frontline capacity to really contribute to that, to be honest with you. But maybe in a logistic sense, if we were sending refueling boats or supply ships to help them accomplish that mission, I think that it's quite possible that we get more favorable treatment. And, there'd be, I don't know, maybe a deal in the works, a favorable deal.
Sure. Some quid pro quo.
That's how Trump works.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's very transactional. So you're right, Simon. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Simon. I'm going to move along. Yep. I've got you. This is a common theme. Lots of talk. I like what I'm hearing, but I really like to see some action. Let's go to Ayr, Ontario. Dave is in Ayr, Ontario. Hi, Dave.
Hey, how are we doing?
Yeah, very good, Dave. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'll agree with a lot of your callers so far, especially I think I've been always conservative, and I have nothing to really complain about what Carney's doing. I think he's laying a foundation that we can break a lot of this reliance on the United States. I look at the way he has made deals that, yes, the fruit won't be today, tomorrow, but I think further down the line, when we do break away from that mold that was always set for us, I think he's doing good in that way.
So you like the idea of him traveling, striking trade deals, trying to find new markets for Canada? That's good.
Yes, and look at the respect that Canada has now. Again, where people are noticing this, and that will come down the line. Again, it's laying the foundation. From there, you build on it, and we're not going to bow to Mr. Trump. I don't want to bow to that man. He's more or less an idiot. Should never be in there, and look at what the American people are suffering for it. So
But again,
I'm glad.
I mean, you can't ignore the fact, though, that it's right next door. It's the most dynamic economy in the world, and the trading relationship is very important for Canada. You just can't separate that. It's just because you don't like the president.
I totally agree. We will always, but you know what? You don't have to work with that man down there. Not what he's showing, not what he believes in, and he should never be there. He should be behind bars. So anyways, going back to Carney, yes, domestically, we all want to see some of the things, pipelines. I want to see refineries in Canada instead of shipping our oil down to Texas to be able to be done. It's been mentioned, but hopefully we'll see actions domestically. But I do agree, securing ourselves in the world, making new trading partners, having deals, defense. They talk about the money going to be spent there, but it's not just with the United States. We do have to diversify. And I really hope in many ways that we do go with the Griffin fighter. The reliance on, oh, yes, it's American, so we have to buy it. That's not right. That's not right. I'd like to see us build our own.
The fact is, it's the aircraft the military wants to buy. Shouldn't we buy what the military thinks we should buy? Because it's a superior aircraft? And there are millions and millions and millions of dollars in every one of those aircraft built by Canadian companies. You're aware of that, right? There's a whole Canadian supply chain. And building components for the entire fleet of F-35s, just not just the Canadian planes that would eventually be delivered here. $4 million worth.
Been offering us also much the same. So, I mean, again, will we gain more just sticking with the same old mold, or do we venture out and try something new?
I think the men and women in our uniform deserve the best that money can buy. And if the military says that's the F-35, then that's the plane you should buy. That would be my opinion. I know you disagree, but that's fine. 1-833-668-2577 on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Tom is in Cambridge. Up next on Mark Carney's handling of the economy. What would you say, Tom? How's he doing?
Well, I think he did a good job with China, and he's helping the people out west because they were going to go broke. So that was a really plus. And I think he's trying to do really well with India, but we can't let the Sikhs dictate Canada's foreign policy. We can't let any other country. If you came to Canada, you're a Canadian. That's fine. You want to support the other places, fine. So I think this is what he did, but all this stuff about submarines, airplanes, we can't afford it. So stay out of these ones and no more help for Ukraine, because all you're doing is killing those people. Try to make peace. Go to Russia, talk to the guy. Come out like the Hungarians did. Urban, he says, my country is not going to give 50 billion euros to Ukraine. Because right now we need the help in Canada. We need the help.
Right.
More money for health. More money. Okay. What's coming?
So we haven't
now.
bought new. Just so I'm clear, so we haven't bought new fighter jets since the early 1980s. You don't think we should buy any more fighter jets? We don't need new fighter jets?
No. We like, who's coming? I mean, nobody's coming. All this threat about he's trying to put army and militarize the whole area, and we can't afford it. Like nobody's
can't
coming.
afford it. We have one functioning submarine.
Fine. We don't need any.
We don't need any. Well, we're buying some. $60 billion contract to start.
We can't afford
to buy a dozen
of them. He's not giving any people.
Okay. All right, Tom. Thank you. Go make peace with the guy who started the war. That's a good one. Okay, Mike in Alberta. Hello, Mike. Hi, Mike.
Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mike. Thank you. Go ahead. What's your opinion?
I have a 50-50, dog in the fight saying this, because I'm American from Texas and as well as Canadian. But nobody likes a bully. You got to say what's right is right. And recently, unfortunately, neighbors in the South, represented by our president of the South, Trump, has been nothing but a bully. I don't think this is a good policy. Just like the PM said it, that it's okay to bow to a bully because it's not paying anymore. And his historic speech in Davos, right? So my point on him, like, you know what? I'm from Texan. I'm a Texan and I'm an Albertan, so I'm as conservative as it gets. but I think Carney is doing a damn good job. He definitely earned my respect. He's trying, and I would give him 10 out of 10 in his whatever he's doing. However, when a country, a good, decent country, with good people, with endless resources, is under attack by somebody we thought that he's an ally, and then he turned out to be a bully, negating on his own deal that he made with Canada when on his first term, right? Right?
Yes,
And
yes,
now
yes.
this,
You're right.
And now this, history remember doers, not talkers. So on a textbook, Carney is 10 out of 10. He has definitely stopped whatever Trudeau caused. But you want somebody like Thatcher back in the 80s, who, or like Trump for the States nowadays, who actually would do a lot of good for his people, regardless of what the world says. I don't care if Canada looks good for giving $1 billion, give or take, to Lebanon. We have people starving here. We have people, good people, working people.
Sure.
85,000 jobs lost in February. How's that acceptable by anybody? Like I'm stunned. If that something like that happened, with this percentage in population happen in the States, they will be probably
it's a big number
for Trump.
It's a big number. Yeah.
So one last thing, and excuse me for that. I think he should focus on Canada. 100%.
More focus on Canada. More focus on Canada. Okay. Look, we've got to run. We're tight on time, and I want to fit in a couple of more calls before the show comes to an end here for today. So, Doug, hang on the line in Halifax. Mike, you two in Calgary, and we'll fit you in before the top of the hour here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Just a few minutes left here on the Monday Talkback. Let's go to Doug in Halifax on Carney's management of the economy. Prime Minister Carney on the job for a year now. Hi, Doug.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Doug. What's your opinion?
I think he's doing a damn good job. I'm going to tell you, I think I called before. I didn't want nothing to do with the Liberals, especially with Trudeau there. And I did not vote for Carney. I did not vote for the Liberals. I voted for these PCs. But I'm glad that it turned out like it is. I don't know if just shit or luck. Oops, sorry about that. I don't know if it's just luck or timing, but I think Carney's the guy to do this job, and he's doing what he can to try to save this country. I don't think people realize how bad off we actually are. But I wish he would spend more money here in Canada as well. I'm from Pictou County originally, and I was down home a couple weeks ago. I don't go down too often. And I was just driving around the old place and seeing the streets are terrible all through the county, the Pictou County. So, spend some money here, get some people working here, pay taxes back into the country, back into the federal government, provincial governments, whatever. But I think that's what he's got to do next,
All right, more of a domestic focus. But this is interesting because we've taken a few calls along these lines today that, you were kind of skeptical. You didn't even vote for the guy, but he somehow over the last year, he's kind of won you over. How did that come to be for you? What was it that he won you over?
I agree with what he's doing. He's trying to save this country. Like I said, he's doing what he can to get businesses going, get people, getting the economy going. And right now, I don't think people realize how bad we are. Even today, I don't know if we're out of the woods yet. So, but he's, and as far as, we helped out Ukraine and stuff, and it's time to spend some money back home now. But other than that,
time to spend some money back home. All right.
I don't think.
Okay, thank you, Doug. And let's take one more. Mike is in Calgary today. Hello, Mike.
So as far as Carney goes, I think it's hard to say that he's done a good job. He said a lot of good things, but when it gets down to it, whether you like the person or not like the person, when it comes to results, honestly, can anybody say that things are better now than they were, a year ago. I mean, I can't think of anything that he's improved. He's offered a lot of promises and things that haven't happened yet. But as far as progress for a year, I think that it's very disappointing.
Okay. What are you disappointed with?
Well, we have the worst standard of living that we've had. I'm 60 now, and my entire life we have been in a downward spiral as far as living and whatnot. Back in the day when I was growing up, a person could easily afford to buy a house and provide for their family with one job. And now two people with good paying jobs are struggling just to feed themselves and cover the basis. So our lives have gotten a whole lot worse.
All right. But has that become worse in the last year?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we're in the highest unemployment rate. We have the highest unemployment numbers since before the pandemic. So, yeah, things couldn't be worse in just about every way that you can think of. And with regard to money going to foreign countries, it's great when, you know, if we're flush and we can help, great. But, I mean, you look at Ukraine. Ukraine has a population higher than all of Canada. So if they have the resources of 45, 46 million people, and we're trying to bail them out, like we're having lots of problems here, and he keeps throwing $2 billion here, $2 billion there to them. And it's like, I think that the focus is to try and make things better at home and be generous when we can.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you for all of your calls today. Interesting discussion. And not much consensus, as is sometimes the case during Talkback. Brand new topic tomorrow and more of your calls. And always the latest breaking news. This is News Radio.